I'd like to call the regular council meeting for the town of Grand Bay-Westfield on Monday, September 11th, 2023 to order at 7:00 p.m. We respectfully acknowledge that Grand Bay-Westfield exists on the traditional Woolastoqua land. The lands of Wabanaki people are recognized in a series of peace and friendship treaties to establish an ongoing relationship of peace, friendship, and mutual respect between equal nations. The river that runs by our town is known as Woolastoq, along which lives Woolastoqua, the people of the beautiful and bountiful river. We, the staff and elected representatives, pay respect to the elders past and present and descendants of this land. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for everyone joining us here this evening. I would like to take a moment to recognize that today is 9/11. Everyone here knows the enormous impact that the events of September 11, 2001 have had on people all across the globe. I know we all remember where we were, who we were with, what we were doing. The frantic phone calls to loved ones and how we were all glued to the news as it unfolded before us. I would like to remember those who were lost in the attacks and also show gratitude to all first responders who continue to protect and serve. I would also like to take a moment of silence to honor and remember Private Jess Randall La Rochelle, recipient of the Star of Military Valor, combat veteran, Afghanistan, Royal Canadian Regiment. Private La Rochelle was a beloved relative of Councillor Day and her husband. We thank Private La Rochelle for his service and wish him peace in his rest. A moment of silence, please. Thank you. Item 4, record of attendance. Let the record reflect that we have full council attendance this evening. Thank you, council. Item 5, agenda approval. The motion is that the council of the town of Grand Bay-Westfield approve the agenda of September 11, 2023 as presented. Do I have a motion? Thank you, Deputy Mayor Toole. Do I have a second? Thank you, Councillor Bellman. Any questions or comments in the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion is carried. Thank you. Item 6, disclosure of conflict of interest. Are there any? There being none, we'll move on to item 7, public hearings, presentations, delegations, petitions. 7A, petitioners Brandy Point Majestic Trail. And we have Deanna McLean and John Weber here to present. Deanna and John, thank you for joining us, and thank you to all of your neighbors for joining us as well. Oh, Councillor Bellman?
I'd like to say apologize for not informing the residents of the neighborhood on this on the trail system. And any further on, I'll notify people who need trails in the town, future trail system in the town. So I apologize. I'm sorry.
Thank you. Deanna and John, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Good evening, my name is Deanna McLean. I am a resident of Brandy Point Road. I've been a resident there since 2005, and I represent the perspectives of Brandy Point Road and Inglewood Drive. Good evening, Mayor, staff, and council. On behalf of our household and those of this local area of our community, I am presenting in stark opposition to the 400-foot trail recommendation that was started before it was brought forth at the August 14th Town Council meeting. Following that meeting, many of you had received letters and emails from several neighbors, including us, who border with this town property, which houses town infrastructure and green space. This was done to have our voices and perspectives heard, all in objection of the town that is essentially a shortcut between streets. As you listen to the following points I share, it's always important to consider council code of conduct and reflect upon our municipality's vision. A welcoming place for all to live, grow, and thrive, and our values: courage, honesty, inclusion, justice, openness, resiliency, teamwork, transparency, trust, and understanding. Our first concern, lack of open consultation, transparency, and neighborhood involvement. The approach to this endeavor has caused unnecessary negative effects to our neighborhood. Since the end of May, when the property was initially toured by Councillors Balcom and Bailmans, neighbors have been left in the dark until the trail was cleared prior to approval from our town, where on August 13th, there was whippersnipping taking place and the trail was already 3/4 cleared. Then, unbeknownst to all of us, again, this trail recommendation was on the town council agenda August 14th. This has adversely affected the level of trust the neighborhood feels, given the town's lack of transparency and dissociation from mostly all neighbors in the area and those whose properties border with the town green space. Simple mail-ins, an information session, canvassing, all that's done at election time, could have easily been accomplished during this time to recruit help, seek input, feedback from us, the neighbors. None of this was done. Decisions should have been made in the best interest of the community as a whole, with careful and objective consideration. This is not what is happening, especially whereas the neighborhood around the multi-purpose trail opposes it and town doesn't have the residents' buy-in. With information and the provision of rationale comes understanding and good decision-making. This is yet to take place on the part of the town. Concern number 2, intended use and long-term vision. Proper project management requires set objectives and limitations. It is imperative that this project has a clear plan and intention. We have concerns with increased traffic, whether by foot or vehicular. Brandy Point Road is a quiet street which narrows to a dead end. With the likelihood that this will attract an increase in foot traffic and safety already an issue due to speed of vehicles driving the area, this is a recipe for disaster. The recommended trail has been cleared approximately 3 meters wide, which is wide enough to accommodate an ATV or a vehicle. We all see ATV use on our roads increasing at an unsafe speed in our residential areas as it is. This adds noise to our quiet area. What and who will prevent motorized traffic from being used on this trail? There is no destination on this trail. It's a wooded space that will act as a shortcut to nowhere between and around 2 streets. If no set objectives for use are identified, there will be misuse of the town's green space and infrastructure. This creates a lot of worry for the neighboring property owners in terms of potential mischief, vandalism, or just being a place for the youth to hang out. Concern number 3, volunteer participation nationally is at an all-time low post-pandemic. We know this. The opportunity for recruitment of local volunteers, especially those who ideally boarded this green space, is now lost. The fact that a respectful process was not taken by the town representatives has limited its opportunity for local recruitment of volunteers. The best way to get buy-in is to involve those who are impacted the most by the decisions being made. The lack of inclusion will limit the trail's volunteer pool. If the town is not investing in this, how does the town plan to sustain it? There must be a plan, a vision, and commitment. Our existing trails need attention and maintenance as it is. Why are we not directing our focus and volunteers on existing projects? Our local volunteer group has some great ideas and goals. The town should be having these on their radar as they do capture the needs of the whole community. The neighbors have concerns for garbage buildup, animal feces being left, hazards, washouts, etc., which require ongoing daily audits sometimes. This cannot be simply promoted as a place for dogs to defecate. Concern number 4, environmental erosion and impact. What does the complete trail entail? What's the plan? Are there limitations, or will the area be clear-cut? If so, will the lumber from the site be sold or gifted? Will this all be clearly documented? There is an extremely mucky section up closer to Majestic Drive. It is not walkable in its natural state. Will fill be added? Where is the existing natural groundwater going to run to if the natural slope of the hillsides are altered? There are several points that are not passable, where groundwater runs off into the stream in a section of 20 to 30 feet or so, where it simply collects into muddy bogs and pools of water. What is the long-term plan for managing natural groundwater runoff from the steep hillsides to our backyards on Brandy Point Road? Back in 2005, I had requested the town to re-ditch behind our property lines on Brandy Point Road, as over time it had filled with natural silt and was flooding our yard. Given that historically we know this, the more vegetation that is taken away, root base will potentially be killed. This is what holds the land together and prevents erosion. Will there be an environmental impact assessment? Neighbors on Inglewood Drive side are concerned for backyard erosion, where they have steep embankments. Has consideration been made if there is any further clearing? Neighbors have concern with potential contamination of existing water supply. If there is any fill, cutting, digging, garbage not managed, given this, we hoped for reassurance that our water supply will not be risked or impacted. We ask that there be consideration for local wildlife, ecosystems. Clearing land can be destructive. Many beautiful birds call this area home. Some animals, although they're a nuisance, also live in the area, and they will be destructive. Lastly, number 5, safety and privacy is a concern. Depending on the weather and the time of year, the streams on and around the trail can rush with water. This can easily be heard from a distance. Who will monitor this and ensure the streams are free of obstructions possibly placed there by users? Despite the existence of town bylaws, sadly, common courtesy and common sense are not all that common. We have residents who do not pick up after their pets. This should be collected and disposed of properly. What if an off-leash animal enters our backyards and an altercation takes place with our pets? Consider littering, bonfires. What liability does any of this bring to the town if it's on town property? And at what risk to the surrounding neighbors? We have concerns for our household safety, with the town promoting and inviting strangers to freely roam and lurk in our backyards. This is a common issue of all of ours here, and security, noise, voyeurism, and privacy is at stake. What reassurance can the town offer us? When the benefits are so great that there is no harm or opposition of existing neighbors, and the community is involved from the beginning, it makes good sense. This does not make good sense. Letters were received at our doors, finally, on Thursday, August 31st, that this motion had been approved, and we are unhappy that this has taken place. As neighbors who are primarily impacted by this trail, we collectively, respectfully request that there be no further development of this pathway. We also ask for your consideration and reassurances relating to what has been presented. In closing, we all have one final crucial question that we would like a clear explanation of. Can any resident of Grand Bay-Westfield clear town land without notice or municipal approval? Or is that a privilege just afforded to elected officials? Are there any repercussions for this, as this is what has taken place prior to August 14th town council meeting? There's something good in every situation, and this scenario has certainly brought the neighborhood closer than ever, as you can see here tonight, which is one positive that we are very thankful for. We are also thankful for this opportunity, your time, and allowing the voices of the neighborhood to be heard, and we all appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Deanna. We appreciate your presentation. John?
Worship, councillors, staff, and neighbors, thank you all for taking your time to come out tonight. I'm John Weber, and I'm on the Majestic Drive side of this situation. My wife Judy and I have lived at the location we're at for 37 years, and as you can, for those who received the town's notice, which I have here, there is a map on the back of it, and if you're checking it out, the trail runs the full length of my property along one side. So I certainly have some stake in the game here. The motion that was made on August 14th, and it's again outlined in the August 31st notice, which was delivered by the town, and I'll read it just in case some folks didn't get this didn't get to everybody. The Council of the Town of Bay-Westfield approved the development of a non-motorized multi-purpose trail linking Majestic Drive and Brandy Point Road to be constructed and maintained by community volunteers with no funds to be allocated in future budgets, and the Public Works Department support provided if required and approved by the CAO. Further, no existing infrastructure is to be disturbed. So, as Deanna mentioned in her comments, we got to this without really any notification, certainly that I'm aware of, for me or my surrounding neighbors. And the, as Deanna mentioned, unintended consequences of the action is it's brought the neighborhood closer together than in opposition to this trail. And yes, the idea was for it to be a neighborhood trail. What's happened is the neighborhood has joined together in opposition to the trail. And there's a great article that I found in, just happened to come across it in Thursday's Telegraph Journal, but it's talking about climate, but it's unintended consequences. And it says, unfortunately, even good policy ideas encounter unintended consequences. And it goes on to say that policy making gets done with somebody comes up with a good idea to achieve an objective, tries to think of the implications and consequences of the proposed action based on the best available evidence, and it goes on. But here I think this was completely lacking and has brought us here tonight to an unfortunate situation. Perhaps if some of this had been considered prior to August 14th, we may not have had to be dealing with what we're dealing with. Anyway, I've also outlined my comments, and which have been provided to the town. Town of Bay-Westfield has now received multiple letters and emails from its residents opposing the proposed trail. Almost all those in Brandy Point Road, Inglewood Drive, and Majestic Drive, who border the town green space where the trail is proposed, are not in favor of the project. And again, the town has been provided with pictures, video, and 3 members of the neighborhood spent a lot of time bringing a petition around to the neighborhood and getting the neighborhood input on the petition. Basically, it's virtually universally no, and what we call a hard no. It's not a maybe. Multitude of issues here, most of which Deanna has discussed. I may repeat some, but many are worth repeating. It strikes me as the most illogical, fathomable thing about this proposed trail is that it's an unnecessary 400-foot shortcut through the woods on town land, which is vehemently opposed by most of its neighbors. Its stated purpose is to be a neighborhood trail, but it's having an extremely negative effect rather than positive. My concerns and comments are as follows. Consultation. The trail is now cleared somewhere between 2/3 and 3/4 of the distance between Brandy Point Road and Majestic Drive. This had been done apparently without the town's approval and certainly not with any prior consultation with its resident neighbors. My wife and I were informed of its existence on August 20th by Deanna, who came to our house as a concerned citizen. From my back porch, I see trees, but I go on the Brandy Point side, I can look and I walk to where that trail has been finished being completed, and I can see my back porch. Access. The access to the trail is a 100 by 50-foot easement between my house at 5 Majestic Drive and Diane Stackhouse at 9 Majestic Drive. The easement is 7 Majestic. We're concerned that the users of the proposed trail will go through our properties as there's no clear access point to it or from it on Majestic Drive due to a ditch that runs parallel to the road. Brook danger. Brook runs parallel to the trail. At the entrance or exit at Majestic Drive, there's steep embankment that could prove to be dangerous. Further danger is that significant snowmelt or rainfall. The brook is treacherous due to the high volume of water that exits through a 4-foot concrete pipe which carries the brook through our neighborhood. The brook flows down to Brandy Point Road and empties into the St. John River. Ground at Majestic Drive, at my end, the embankment previously mentioned is boggy and may contain an underground spring. I believe the trail construction stopped when this boggy, muddy area was reached. Cost and maintenance. The idea that the trail can be built at no cost to the town and maintained by volunteers is not based on any concrete evidence that I'm aware of. The previous ground issue could have add some cost to remediation, signage, and possible barriers would at least be other costs. Unauthorized use. There are ATVs that can be heard in our neighborhood, although we have not had any come to our property or the easement. The creation of a trail may entice them to come and drive on it. The portion that has been cleared is certainly wide enough to accommodate them. Need. There are many walkers with and without dogs, joggers, etc. who use Majestic Drive, Meadowbrook Drive, Inglewood Drive on a daily basis. The neighborhood has easy access points to the Heritage Trail and safe walking and biking lanes along roadways. There seems to be no demand for a shortcut through the woods to Brandy Point Road from Majestic Drive. Destination points. The trail would not lead to any destination point in either direction. This is particularly true on Brandy Point Road, which is a short, very narrow, dead-end road which ends in a very secluded private neighborhood. Privacy. This is a personal concern, but I'll mention it. My wife and I bought the lot at 5 Majestic Drive and built our house 37 years ago. We're gardeners, enjoy the privacy of our backyard. I've maintained the easement and ditches across the front of my property, either at my own expense or involving mowing and snow removal. Finally, in conclusion, based on the information provided by our neighbors verbally and by email, it seems that 2 citizens felt the trail was a good idea and began its creation. This was done without consulting the neighbors and consequently has created a huge negative response. There's considerable outrage and concern. Our recommendation to the town is to scrap the trail and restore calm to our area. Please give the proper consideration to all the information and input and discard the Brandy Point to Majestic Drive trail project. Thank you.
John, appreciate your presentation as well. I want to thank all of you for the clear passion and commitment I'm seeing here this evening. both from the speakers and from the sheer volume of people that have shown up here tonight. That shows clear civic engagement, and I appreciate that. I appreciate the engagement as voiced by council at our last meeting, and taking the time to share your unique insights, because when residents are engaged on an issue like you are here tonight, it adds depth to the conversation that would not be there otherwise. So we every time we learn and improve when we hear from our neighbors. Your perspectives are valuable, and I really thank from the bottom of my heart for bringing them here before us tonight. So thank you for all of that. John, do you have anything to add at this time to the issue?
No, unless council has questions for Deanna or John, or there's questions that maybe from me. Yeah, the town, yeah, was started without our knowledge. But I guess I just would like to bring to everybody's attention that in our recent Parks and Rec Master Plan, 80% of the respondents indicated that development of parks and trails should be a high priority. Going about it this way, I agree, is entirely wrong. Anyways, I come from Battleford, and every single utility corridor that we have there, which corridor includes water, wastewater, gas, is a trail. So what happens is it'll run between the backyards of neighbors. And quite often what you have along there is fences, you have landscaping to create privacy. It could be shrubs, could be hedges. There's a couple that stick out in my mind that were trellises with the leaves that grow up and create privacy. And those homes are generally more valued than homes that didn't have access to the trail. But again, it's a different environment here than it is out there. But that's generally found across the country. And again, just commend the comments about volunteers. The Parks and Rec Master Plan, it does call for the town to do a trail master plan. I should also let everybody know that we have an active transportation plan that was completed in 2019 or 2020, I don't recall the year it's been. Yeah, so maybe it's time to revisit that and take a comprehensive look that includes trails and where it's relevant. Not all town land here that we have as corridors is appropriate or suitable for trails. We have to take into consideration, again, as been said in the petition, about what's good for the community as a whole. But getting back to these trails that we had in Battleford, and I talked about other communities where I've used them. They're not destination trails. They're out, people get out and walk. My experience has been they're quite beautiful. In Battleford we ended up paving them all, and they're great green spaces. But for council, I would encourage you to ask administration to work on a report. We've already started for our residents here. We've already started the budget process. We started that in July. We met in August about it. Doing an active transportation plan and a trail master plan was not proposed by administration for 2024, just because, as you'll learn at the end of October, money is really tight. We've had a lot of money cut from the town. I see Ryan nodding his head in agreement. For us to do a trail plan, and I think it has to be done in conjunction with an active transportation plan. That's the proper way to go about it. I don't know that we can include it in the 2024 budget. The Parks and Rec Master Plan didn't give a timeline. We've done a considerable amount of work between Gary and Rick and Brock throwing his support in there towards implementing that plan. We just haven't got to a trail plan yet. So that's kind of where we stand. I don't know if there's anything more, Your Worship, that you would like to know.
I know it's good. Do we have any other questions for council? Thanks, Day.
The old lady on council's got some concerns, Your Worship. And my concern is, and I know former councillor Snodgrass is in the audience, so he can back me up if my memory slipped. How do we start building a trail that we as councillors don't even know about, and then we have it come to council after it's already started? Like, I'm at a loss on because we don't do business like that. Am I correct on that? We didn't do business like that. And I mean, here we have a business where it's being done without us having knowledge. I mean, I read it and I read some of the emails from this young lady, and I'm wondering, what was that about? And I'm figuring it's because of my age and my allergies that I missed a few sandwiches along the way. And I get here tonight and I hear and I see and I've read all the reports, and I'm sorry, this is sad for us because we look like the cart left, or the horse left the stable before the cart got it ready to come, or whatever that expression is. And I think that's pretty sad on this council with all the good things that we've been trying to do, that this comes and it muddies the waters and it makes us look bad.
Thank you, Councillor.
So in this report, I would really recommend and love to see, how did this get started?
Well, you know, I think what I'm hearing from the presenters, and I'm hearing from the emails, and I'm hearing from members of council and also some of the comments that the CAO has made, that we could, you talked a lot about evidence-based decision-making, and I think that there are definite improvements that we can make in this regard regarding process. So I've sort of written some things down here, so I'll put a resolution out for council to consider. So that the council of the town of Grand Bay-Westfield direct volunteers to continue to cease and desist clearing the utility corridor, because we had already done that at the last meeting. So to continue to cease and desist clearing the utility corridor between Brandy Point Road and Majestic Drive, consistent with that previous council directive. And also, that council direct staff to develop an administrative report on community and neighborhood trails to give us that evidence-based decision-making and guide to move forward. And also, develop a process surrounding the approval of same. And to report back to council no later than October 10th, is that reasonable?
Yeah, or maybe the second meeting in October, I think that would be the 17th, 18th, what's the date?
Your worship, may I be able to add to that resolution?
Well,
RCAO,
I think we need to,
20,
do we need,
the 23rd.
okay,
I think we need to approve it, then you can make it friendly.
Okay.
Is that okay with the process?
Move second and then
May I say
October
for a second,
23rd.
please?
No, I'm sorry,
no, no.
I'm sorry.
No.
Yeah,
Clear
that's,
45 years ago, Beth. Maybe you should go take a walk.
Dallin, please, I will have order in this room,
October 23rd.
October 23rd. Do I have a mover for this motion? Thank you, and that's Deputy Mayor Toole. Do I have a second? Thank you, Councillor McIntosh Lawrence. Councillor Day, do you have a friendly amendment to the resolution?
yes, I think, like John's brought a lot of good stuff to our town.
This has to be related to the issue.
Okay, it is.
Thank
You've
you.
talked about trees and trees having a value.
Yeah.
And I think it's time, before we wait till the trees are all gone.
Councillor, is
Look
this
at
an
that.
amendment to the motion?
Well, I amend the motion to read that we ask the staff to include, the wording has sort of gone out of my head, but the value of trees. And I don't know how to word that to put it in there.
Sorry,
Do you have a suggestion?
Councillor Day, I don't know that we have the resources to do that. We don't have we don't have an arborist on staff. And then to engage an arborist as a consultant to provide value on trees along there, intuitively, would be cost prohibitive. That would be my concern there. I don't know that that's the best use of money. I'm
It
not
might
disagreeing with the intent. From a practical matter, I don't know that we don't have the resources on staff.
No.
And then,
But I think we could put in there for vision forward. I'm not saying that we have to have an arborist and that we have all the process right down, but moving forward, we start and It's like climate control.
So can I just make a comment about that, Councillor Day? There is wastewater lines running underneath.
Mm-hmm.
So if there's a break in the line,
Mhm.
everything will be cleared out and it will be dug up and it will be fixed and then it'll be put back in, and then typically what we do is we let nature take over. There may be some seed planted, but there'd be seed planted. There would be no intentional effort to replant trees.
No.
So it's already a corridor. The trees, if work needs to be done, are valueless. The trees that are there now fundamentally are valueless because if we have to make a repair, they're gone. That's the price of us maintaining municipal infrastructure.
Am I able to make a comment?
I'm sorry,
Sorry, one of the speakers.
those speakers? Yes, you may.
Just on the heels of my presentation, I did mention the fact that green space was used to access the stream, back in, 2008, and it was cleared out. I don't remember there being any actual clearing. I don't remember there being whippersnipping. I do remember machinery going in, doing its job, and leaving, being able to access the property. But I don't recall any actual preparation of the site because it's just like brush, right? So keeping that in mind too. The area's already been accessible in the last 10 or so years, so there's not that much massive obstructions in the way, but we all know that it is accessible for that reason.
Thank you very much for that clarification. So we have a motion on the table that has been motioned and seconded. Do we have any questions or comments on the motion?
Councillor Day proposed an amendment, it should be.
Oh.
Did you
What
want
was
to carry
the-
forward with it?
No, I'll back off on it.
Sorry.
And we can incorporate some, I'm sure something in the plan about tree value, et cetera. So that it
Well, I
is
think-
addressed.
I guess I'm just looking down the road more than anything.
Right.
Because for us to lose a tree that has huge value, and you've brought it up more than one time, and I did listen. And it's something I'd like to see us lead and do something with, than wait to be told to do it.
Thank you, Councilor.
I got one question
Yes.
about sewer lines. If it's a failure in the line, what happens? Meaning, that you have to direct by road? Just for curiosity,
Are you
how
able to-
long do you last the pipe to? Just so
Sorry.
that's, if there's a failure in the line, if there's a pinhole or break, there's a high pressure line, what happens to the concrete doo-doo? Where does it go?
The stuff that's broken,
By
so
road? Yes.
there's a grate there. But typically the ground around it is absorbed. Sometimes breaks aren't noticed for years. You can pull out pipe connectors and stuff like it's totally eroded and it's been eroded for years, but it's only noticed at that time. Other times it can be a sudden and abrupt breach, and in which case there may be more forcible, but there's so much ground around it, it's typically absorbed there. But at the end of the day, Works Department will move in, they'll dig it up and they'll fix it, and if there's something in the way, brush and trees, they'll be removed.
Because the guy being John had mentioned that he smelled something in that area, this marshy spot, he smelled something, so I just wonder, is there a break there or not? Because he said it's so marshy.
I didn't say I smelled something, I said.
Somebody said
Bob.
he smelled
And
something.
can we keep discussion and go to the motion on the table,
Okay,
please?
sorry.
Thank you. Any questions, further questions or comments on the motion as stated? Deputy Mayor Toole.
Thanks, I just want, I like the wording of our motion, because it's the continue to cease and desist, I just want everybody to know that, I think it was a poorly worded motion last time, I think that's kind of on all of us, but there was no approval to do anything to the trail, the town wanted consultation first, it was approved in the wording, but we did have, there was to be no work done, so just to let everybody know, it's a continued cease and desist, we never wanted work done on that trail before the neighborhood was consulted, so. An apology for the poorly worded motion, that was it, but there was really intended to have no work done on that trail. I think I speak for the crowd.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, for that clarification also. There are no further questions or comments. All in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion is carried. Thank you, council. And again, thank you to the presenters and to the neighborhood members who came to share their perspectives with us here today. We appreciate your presence.
Thank you.
Item 7B. It's going right on. All right, item 7B, RCMP, Sergeant Luke Sampson. Sergeant, we are pleased to have you with us here this evening. Thank you for joining us.
Good evening, everyone. My pleasure to be back with you guys. I know I've been quite busy this summer, not in Grand Bay, but kind of all over the map. A quick update on the numbers. Where's real wood here? We're actually doing really well. We do have a member leaving, Constable Gallagher's leaving the town of Grand Bay. He's been transferred to Nova Scotia. We already have a person filling back there. So I was able to proactively do this so we're not left short, which is great. We're almost full staff. Our overtime has gone down by 2/3 of what it was, if not more. So that's a great relief for Jean-Luc and I that we were left alone the past 4 or 5 months there. We've also been able to secure 1 extra position through the province. That's our commanding officer that was able to secure budget with the province to allow us to have 1 more person. I don't have the time frame on that. This is fairly new and kind of in the making. One of the most recent things, if you guys heard of this or not, is we have a lot of police officers, experienced police officers, laterally from Fredericton Police, St. John Police, and other police departments, which is through the Experienced Officer Program, which makes it a lot faster to get members. They're already local. They are guaranteed to come back to New Brunswick and post it locally. So this will go fairly fast. And like I said, it's experienced officers, so it's not like we got to train them. There's a little bit of training to how we do things with the RCMP, but for the most part, it's virtually the same thing. So in the coming weeks and months, that goes really well. The Megan Wells, as well, our community program officer, has already been involved in the community. There's already been a fraud presentation done at the church. I can't remember which church, for the love of me there. I think Church of the Resurrection. That's right. So that was done recently, and we only plan on doing more programs like this. I did publish, I was media on call a couple of weeks ago, and I did do an article. It was in French, I don't think they translated it, but long story short, just to say we have more officers on the road right now in the morning, and at pickup time for the kids, there's always an influx of traffic the first couple of weeks because parents drive kids to school just to establish a routine. So we try to have a little bit more enforcement or education near the school zone as well. Another topic that I wanted to talk to you about, because this has been I received a message from some of you guys in regards to discharge of firearm. Over the last week, we had a call that was reported to us, officers attended. No elements of criminality was found. However, looking at the, just so I don't make my things confused here, the hunt and trap regulation summary for 2022-2024, that comes from the province of New Brunswick. The guidelines are, I'll just say them out quick. It's illegal to discharge a rim-fired rifle, center fire rifle, or shotgun loaded with ball or slug within 400 meters of a dwelling, school, playground, athletic field, solid waste disposal site, or place of business. It's legal to discharge any shotgun or muzzle-loaded firearm within 200 meters. This is what the call had, was a muzzle-loaded. And the other person, so it's 200 meters from any structures like that. If you guys are looking at having a bylaw that would further this or make it more regulated, you'd have to go on your own to do this. But so far for the province, for the call we had was 200 meters. Should there be any enforcement action to be taken on that, on those specific laws, it's normally the Department of Natural Resources that would look into that. So I would take the call we recently had as a kind of a learning curve for us as far as, it's not a call we get very often. Most hunters they know what they're doing, they know where they are, they know their boundaries. If there's a bigger element, like let's say this person had no license, let's say this person was at legal firearms are responsible for. This is something we can carry, but for the most part, we refer that to the Department of Natural Resources. Any questions on that? I think that would be,
Councillor Bill?
Was it the duck hunters?
was that sorry?
Were the duck hunters shooting off rifles and bullets that they're complaining about, or?
I am not sure. This was just a call of someone discharging firearms, and the person wasn't sure if it was too close or too far from where they were.
Because they're hunting off Brandy Point Road. They've been hunting there for the last 30 years.
Well, that's what I mean. Like, that's why we didn't find anything, because one of the members just happened to be on overtime that night. Rob Driscoll, a good member, and he says, Luke, I'm not sure if this is legal. I said, but from what you're telling me, I don't think there's nothing legal going on, but I'll check into it just to make sure. So at this point in time, I don't think it warrants any enforcement, so to speak, but it's just good to remember. I can share this with Brock as well, if this can be shared through the your guys' website, just as a news release, like, hey, heads up, this is, and I mean, it's within reason too, right? If someone's pushing the limit where, you know, they're right at the 200 meter mark or the yard mark, like, just be reasonable. Like, most responsible firearm owners know better, but it's just to set the tone, hey, we're keeping an eye on that. That'd be my, and don't fail to report it. If you think something's going on, I'd rather you report it, turns out to be nothing, then we can move on, versus not reporting something that should be reported, as usual.
Deputy Mayor Toole?
It's not that the Department of Natural Resources, Justice Public Safety.
It's public, I say DNR because they're the one looking after the, I was just going through their policy here, and so DNR will look into this. I know it's public safety, but it falls under their mandate, so to speak. I always get the so many different acronyms of policing agencies here. I get really, I do get confused. I know it's not our direct thing, just like the waters, for example. I know it's not us to go and deal with that, but yeah. So that's what I got for the firearm complaint for the week. Or weekend.
And is there any sort of communication between JPS and the RCMP, you know, and sort of knowledge sharing in terms of this type of information?
Yes, there is. And that goes with everything else. So if there's any issues where we don't know the answer, like if I don't know the answer directly to something, I'll go to them, or I don't know who the person is for that specific problem.
Did you have another question? I thought I saw you.
No, it's just funny, we live on Bay Road, and we can protect the next by in front of our house, and 40 feet for 100 meters out there getting shot. So it's just ironic how nature works. We protect them in a certain area, and they're in open water, and people are shooting them. It's just fun, that's all.
Yeah, and I think it's worth noting too that there are a lot of seasons out there that people just aren't aware of. There's varmint seasons, and you know, goose hunting.
They're shooting out towards the river too. They're not shooting at houses. They're sitting on the sand barge out there. Yeah. They're shooting out to the water for the duck.
And I don't mean to, sometimes it might be some people from, I've seen this in the past, and I'm not saying this specific case, but sometimes I find a lot of people that move from other communities that might not have been used to this, yeah, the noise or the example of that practice might be unaware that this is not illegal, it's actually in fact.
Maybe communication around the duck season is here, right. Maybe we can put on our bulletin board that.
That's right. I think that would be a lot of problems, but again, I like encourage you, if you think there's an issue, call. I'd rather you call than not call. That's always going to be my message on everything. That's it. Besides that, what else? The quarterly report, I just messaged Lizette from district this morning. She only has the old quarterly report, which I always find her behind when we have our meeting, because this is the end of our quarter right now, the end of September. The new one I'll have it for the first week of October, so I'll be able to present on this next month. One thing I can touch on right now that's current that might not be in the report, there was an influx of, and I found it ridiculous how they play with statistics sometimes, but we had an increase of 15 break and enters in the last month in Grand Bay. And it's inaccurate to say, it sounds a lot this way. It was a contained couple that created all that havoc. Both have been arrested and they've been charged accordingly. So it's the same two people and we got them. So it's not like, what is the South Region crime? People that just happen to be in our community. So that's been looked at. Just want to make sure in case you hear through the grapevine what's going on and the town's falling apart, that's not the case.
Is there anything happening that we should be aware of?
No, I tell people again, like my big thing right now, and that's not just my big thing, but the RCMP in general for the start of the school year, that's the big thing. Just keep an eye on. There's more kids on the road. I know the kids are not like directly on the road. Just slow down. You know, no need to going 10 kilometers slower might save someone's life as opposed to going 10 kilometers faster. There's no way you're in a rush if you need to save that extra 2 seconds that someone's buying any deal, but just be present. That's all I'm saying. Like, keep your eyes on the road and pay attention. That's it.
So Sergeant Galloway, we're losing John Galloway.
Yes.
But we are receiving another FTE based here in.
This will be, yes, regardless of John. John is being replaced, actively being replaced now. This member finished 2 years in the K Division in Alberta and 2 years in Nunavut, and he's coming down to Grand Bay. But that extra position that we're getting has nothing to do with that. They're supposed to be sergeant, corporal, and 6 constables. Now we're going to be 7 constables by the end of it. So. Sorry.
Hope that wasn't your firearm.
Sorry about that. So we're not losing anything there. It's not, if anything, we're gaining. And I know for boundaries, one fight I've been fighting, because it kind of came left field for me, was the boundary on far we go on Highway 7. We used to cover until mile marker 42 maybe.
Petersville
Hill, right after that was kind of us, how far we were taking it.
Yeah.
And after that, we were kind of debating, and not too long ago, I attended a rollover. It was near mile marker 29. To give you an idea, that's like Geary exit.
Right.
And I said, that makes no sense.
So did they reduce it on the other side of the boundary?
That's right, but this was reduced, and I'm still trying to make some sense of it, because I said, when was I consulted on that? Or the logistic of sending someone there that far when we covered all the way to Musquash kind of deal. So that was a bit, it's an ongoing battle, and it's more the map's changing, and our dispatch said, oh, it's been discussed a long time ago, and I was like, nope, this has not been discussed. And like, if I knew about it, fine, different story, but it's not the case. And we do get a lot of collisions out that way for X, Y, and Z reasons. Like, it's new to us, so now I'm battling so they can share that portion of the highway. Especially, like, give you an idea, we had an impaired rollover not too long ago, and instead of taking the fella back here for a breath test, we ended up taking it to Oromocto. Like, policy in the criminal code law says you need to take him to the closest detachment for a breath test, and Oromocto is the closest. So just to give you an idea, for that far out, it should be down responding to those complaints. So I am fighting that battle, and I'm not sure where it's going, but I hope it's in our favor.
How will that impact our coverage here if that happens?
Technically, it's only collisions. Like, knock on wood again, it's not like we get a lot of calls beside collisions. Like, we don't really cover the communities nearby. I mean, it might happen, but so far it hasn't been like that at all. I can count that maybe in the last 2 months that I've noticed this being a thing, maybe 4 calls, which is an increase, but I mean, it's still 4 calls I'd rather them handle than us be local. So time will tell us for this as it goes for stats. I don't have enough stats to produce some proper result on that.
We have any other questions for the sergeant? Councillor Bell?
Back on the ATVs on roads, how are we going with those?
Excuse me?
ATVs on roads,
What about it?
going up and down roadways and.
Again, call us like they're.
How-
What's difficult with this is if you guys can identify who's driving, or if it's someone local, or you know the person that's right, provide us with that information, because we cannot pursue those types of vehicle for the reason of being no helmet, driving fast, or anything like this. Just risk of injury that could cost that person or the public involved. Any pursuit for that matter, we're not supposed to pursue unless it's a life or death. Like, we're not supposed to pursue this.
In the age of a person driving an ATV on a highway with a passenger, how old are you allowed to drive the bike?
I'd have to confirm, but I think it's 16. I don't quote me on that.
No.
So that's not my realm of expertise by any stretch there. But we try to always make sure, like if we see someone driving slow, like hauling wood, got a helmet on, they're taking their time, they're not bothering anybody. The odds of me even trying to get involved with that would be, but it's I don't mean to put a stereotype, but you see something like a young teenager on a Raptor quad of some kind driving crazy on the road, well, that's going to attract attention, obviously, and that's what we try to stop. We're trying to, it's one of those rules where we could go hard and fast, and I prefer some educational component, make sure everybody's safe, that there's bigger problems, and I don't want to tackle this, it doesn't have to, right? So everybody else, because if we start enforcing this, like literally black and white, well, everybody's going to lose their privilege when people are not causing much havoc on their quads or ATVs, right? Makes sense.
Councillor Bell?
Question, Sergeant. In the case of the ATVs, especially traveling along River Valley Drive, particularly on weekends, that's when most of these ATVs are driving. Would video footage be of any benefit to you?
Oh, 100%. Because even if it's video footage from your cell phone, even if it's grainy or something like this, it's better than not having it at all. If I can say, well, it's a red quad with a guy with a blue helmet, for example, well, odds are if it's 2 minutes down the road and we get the same call, we can start batching pieces. And again, that's as much evidence as you can provide the police is always going to be beneficial. Even if you think, oh, they might not need this, I'd rather have it than not have it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Councillor Murphy?
Can you just go back to a minute regarding the Oromocto,
Yes.
that being closer to our area than say Hampton, and are you working on maybe having them respond more? Is that what you were saying?
So yes, so what ended up happening is one day we got a call for a rollover, and I started arguing on the radio saying, no, that's Oromocto area. I can't remember the mile marker where it was, but clearly somewhere where we've never gone before. And the dispatcher came back saying, no, this is they've changed boundaries, you gotta attend. Well, I'm not gonna start the fight live in the moment. We're just gonna respond to get this sorted out. People need help, right? But it's afterwards saying, okay, now this has been dealt with, the fire's been put out. Why is this our area now? This is when I'm fighting to say, no, this portion of the highway, not to be selfish or not wanting the extra work, it's just, it's unfeasible for us to leave. Let's say we're in Musquash, driving all the way there, someone calling for help. So it doesn't make sense in that regard. That's what I'm fighting for right now, to say, no, that this extra 20 kilometers of highway should be an Oromocto Memphis going that far. Because they do cover some of those communities like Erie and so on and so forth that would be in between. I'm not familiar with all the communities, but like Councilor Bellin was saying, we just go just past Petersville or whatever mile marker that would be. It might be a little more than that actually. So that's what I'm finding so we can kind of retain the old boundaries we used to have.
Sorry, I think Sergeant, her question was more around having a relationship with Oromocto, that Oromocto would provide support to you rather than receiving support from Hampton, which is an hour away.
Oh no, in that sense, yes. Like if it's this side, we kind of have this. Sorry about that. I should have. I didn't understand the properly. We kind of have this unwritten agreement that if we go this way, Oromocto will help us out. We won't get Hampton. That would make no sense, right? And same goes if we get something near the Musquash area. Well, St. George Attachment will come help us out. Same thing for out this way. We'll help each other out. It's mainly not to say like we're RC9 now with Hampton. It's not. No, it's a Hampton member going all that. But it will never happen that way. It's still going to be whatever's closest on like looking at the map, like the geography. But we do work hand in hand. It's all the same RCMP, right? The only time there might be a little bit of a difference is as complex as it can be is if something's going on in between us and St. John Police, there's a little bit more legwork between dispatchers to coordinate efforts. But we're still helping each other.
Thank you, Sergeant. There are no other questions or comments. Thank you again for your presentation and your service to our community.
My pleasure.
I appreciate you coming before us tonight.
No, and like I said, open door. I'm meeting with John here in a couple of days. I think Thursday or Wednesday. I have to look at my schedule here. Any questions you guys have, you all have my number. You all have my. I try to be as diligent as possible with responding to you guys over text, phone call, or email. Anything you have, doors open. This is not it's a two-way communication, a two-way street, and everybody's welcome.
Thank you very much.
That's all I got for you.
Okay, thanks. Have a good night.
Have a good night, guys.
Thank you.
The motion is that the Council of the Town of Bay-Westfield receive and file the information as presented. Thank you for motion. Councillor Bellman, do I have a second? Councillor Bellman, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion is carried. Thank you, Councillor. We'll move on to 7C, review of the Fundy Regional Service Commission draft 2024 budget. And we have Bill Lett here with us this evening, Chief Executive Officer of the FRSC. Thank you, Bill, for joining us. The floor is yours.
Thank you for having me here this evening. It is great to be here. It's the third time the Commission is before each one of the member councils this year. And I think it's really an important step when that happens. First, just to build awareness. I think there's still a lot of people just scratching their head saying, what's this commission about and what are we talking about? But also to take opportunities to integrate feedback from councils on the business of the commission, and that's exactly what we're doing here today. I have a short presentation on the draft 2024 budget, but a more detailed account can be received through a report and a budget that has circulated to this council earlier or later in August. So I'm not trying to cover everything in this presentation, just a high level. The two big objectives is obviously to socialize the budget to each council, and that's because our budget is required to have a 45-day review period. So we present a budget, the board says, okay, proceed with your 45-day review, and then we cannot adopt a budget until that 45 days is completed. And part of that process is also to make sure that each council receives it and that they are given the opportunity to provide feedback. So we're within that kind of time frame right now. So certainly if you have feedback, questions, or feedback on the budget during this session, we will take it and we will consider it for any adjustments needed. So the commission, this is another important milestone for the commission, this budget. We have a responsibility to develop a budget that aligns with the expanding mandate, all while achieving results for our members, partners, stakeholders, and customers. I believe this budget does set the tone, will set the tone for the commission in 2024. And this tone was already set by the board earlier this year when it set its work plan for the year. And it was also the tone that was set by the board when it adopted the strategy back about a month ago now. And if I could kind of summarize what that tone is, I think that tone is one of optimism, one of forward thinking, of collaboration and thoughtfulness as it relates to this new approach to regional collaboration and to service delivery. This budget enables the Commission to deliver on its vision, the regional strategy, the newly formed committees that it developed, and the work of partners and stakeholders that will help the region achieve its potential. The budget development process was fairly detailed. It started back in June, and we established some criteria as well as timelines on how we wanted to go about developing that budget. And these are all the steps that were taken, and we're in that kind of October timeframe. The big date that we're looking for is that 45-day review will be completed once we present what we would intend to have a scheduled vote on the budget on October 26th. So we still have a little bit of time before then. This is the budget of the commission, and I'll just a couple caveats before I get into detail. Our overall budget is $19 million, and the reason that you don't see $19 million there is that the landfill and the solid waste commission is part of our budget, but it is supported entirely through tipping fees. So we subtract that from that budget, and this also includes old subsidies that we've received through provincial government. So it's a little bit less than the total expenditure as well. So one of the things that is really important about this budget is that when the board adopted its work plan in 2023, it said take advantage as much as you possibly can of any federal or provincial monies that you can access to support this new operation, because every one of our members are challenged with their own financial challenges. We're tracking right now in totality to access over $3.5 million from the provincial government in 2024, and that's through prior agreements, through regional development corporations, through Working NB, and of course environmental government and the Regional Development Corporation. So before we entered into the budget, we were in a favorable position for two reasons. One is that there's this thing called the Regional Services Support Fund, and this is a fund that was developed by the provincial government to support regional service commissions and mandates. Last year we had access to $950,000 approximately, and this year we have $1.4 million. So that pot has grown and it will continue to grow. So it's just more money that we have to support the commission. The other one is that the regional facilities budget specifically, similar to municipalities, has a rollover. So if there's or carryover. So in 2022, there was a surplus of some of the regional facilities, and that made the cost of regional facilities for us in 2024 that much cheaper. It was about $350,000. So right before the budget started, it made about $700,000 of in the good for our budget. So that does help for our budget. The other thing that you'll notice with these numbers is that some members are paying more and some members are paying less. And that can be awful frustrating if you don't understand why. And I'll explain the two big reasons why. The first is that there are fixed costs that we have that are established by contract. One of those is economic development and tourism promotion. And in that relationship that we have with Envision St. John, we have a prior members agreement that defines how we go about the funding relationship, which is adopted by the Commission. And in that, in 2024, the funds that St. John were to pay into the Envision St. John was to stay the same for 2023 as it was for 2024, while the overall cost would increase just a little bit more. So what that means is that members will pay a little bit more outside of St. John in 2024. So that was already established before. So that's one. The other is proportionality. All our budgets are defined by two big topics: tax base and population. Population numbers have remained the same. They are only using 2021 numbers. But tax base increases every year, so everybody's development increases. So if your share has increased while somebody else's has remained the same, you have a larger responsibility to the overall pot. So those tax numbers have come out, those tax-based numbers have come out, and that also is an influence in dividing up these per member costs for 2024. The other thing I wanted to mention is that we have a lot of mandated services in the Commission that have grown. They're here, but 94% of all our expenditures fall within 3 different areas: regional facilities, the solid waste budget, as well as economic development and tourism promotion. The other ones are very, very small in comparison to those 3 bigger buckets. One of the things that we did want to identify through these presentations is corporate costs. This is one of the pressures that the Commission is experiencing. And there's a variety of corporate cost pressures that are requiring us to revisit our budget. And one of them is how we define corporate. So in the past, we were really a landfill. That was where our majority of our budget was. So our communications efforts were in the landfill. Our legal costs were in the landfill. Like everything that we did was in the landfill. And now as we grow, we have all these different portfolios. Those can no longer be charged exclusively on the tipping fee. They have to be charged corporately across all these different line items and all these different budget categories. So that's one thing that's happening, is that our whole definition of what is corporate is now changing. And it has placed more pressure on us. Also, our staff has grown and we no longer maintain our existing space at Green Mountain. We'll have still our solid waste staff there, but we have a temporary space in the uptown, and we're continuing to do our long-term investigation of that. We also have our enabling services, so IT, back of room services needs to be upgraded to meet the demands, as well as some additional human resources. In terms of tipping fees, we wanted to review this with you as well. Part of the budget also is our need to adjust tipping fees as need be. Tipping fees fulfill the expenditures of the budget. This is how we pay for the solid waste budget. There's no other ways. It's not your membership fees that pay for it. It's this. So we have these equations of how much tonnage do we think we're going to have access to, and how much should we charge to achieve the expenditures that are projected for us in 2024. And this is one of our long-standing service. It was established since 1997. And these adjustments are really reflective of current market value and increased cost pressures that we're experiencing. We're one of the only few jurisdictions in Canada to present a tiered pricing structure to incentivize diversion. I'm not sure if everybody knows that, by using garbage to subsidize recycling and compost. So for example, garbage is proposed at $135 a ton, while recycling is at $0 and compost is at $50. Solid waste, specifically garbage, still remains competitive with other regions. Typically, other regions are charging in the realm of $120 to $140 per ton. But we are one of the 2 of 6 landfills in New Brunswick providing all 3 streams of service: garbage, recycling, and compost. Most regions only provide garbage and recycling, making their systems inherently less expensive. Compost is a subsidized service. It's not cost neutral. It is something that we have to take on. Something that's not in this, but it's in your package. There is a capital budget that is included in our budget as well. It's all landfill related. All the other services we have is not capital intensive in terms of our budgeting process. And we are asking for just over $1 million in 2024. That's down from 2.2 million in 2023. And the primary focus of those capital expenditures are around leachate management, which is the water that drains off of the landfill, which, as you know, with these weather incidents that we've had throughout the year, continues to escalate our costs because we need drivers to track that out and get it processed. Added security and to rebuild the flare. So you're probably asking why are we increasing these tipping fees, and I have some answer for that. One of them is tonnage revenue. So we know that there's some adjustments related to tonnage that have occurred. One is the City of St. John's Wastewise program has reduced through its diversion program 4,000 tons a year. Musquatch, which is no longer part of the commission, did have 700 tons on average, and then Hampton as well. There's a portion of Hampton that still remains with the other regional service commission due to the ongoing transition. So just those three categories equates to $10 on the tipping fee, just over $10 on the tipping fee. So that tipping fee charge has increased by $12. That's $10 of the story right there, right away. So tonnage is a major story of why those tipping fees are increasing outside of inflation, wages, fuel, and the rest of it. I did want to just mention one thing before I go. This is a tricky thing to talk about because you see the St. John Wastewise program and you say, oh, well, that's decreased revenue. Bad news, right? That's bad news. We have to increase the tipping fee. It's actually good news. We've diverted garbage that can go in other forms of recycling. So this is a success story. It is part of our business, though. With more diversion, we have to become creative. So for us, we don't necessarily look at this as a bad story. We shouldn't be doing that. We don't want, if a member increases their diversion rate, we celebrate that. It does impact the overall bottom line. We still need to proceed with it, finding that revenue in some form. But I would not say that that's a mistake or a problem that we're facing. It's more of a result of some good effort and diversion. The other thing we wanted to mention is that we are still trying to mitigate those costs in the landfill. That's an important facet of our operations. And there's a couple areas that we wanted to mention. One is print, paper, and packaging program through RCMP, that there's an opportunity there for us to access, as well as the HITE DIA that is currently active with the environment and local government process, as well as securing some long-term aggregate for our covering materials for ourselves. All these are all currently active, and they could mitigate costs if they come in, but we likely won't have these answers before the budget gets adopted, so it will be something we discover in 2024, but they're all active. The other one is seeking to increase electrical production. So we're really kind of the best equipped that we've been in a long time because we've just drilled 21 new wells, and those wells are going to feed into that electrical generation station. So we are very hopeful that that will generate increased revenue because we sell that energy to St. John Energy, and that will give us some new revenue streams. We're still banking on low because we're not sure if it's going to work. We're hoping it's going to work, but all indications are that that's really equipping us for success. So I think this is the last slide. Yes, that's the last slide. For us, the draft budget you receive upholds the Commission's commitment to financial due diligence, alignment with the Commission's objectives and mandate, and what we believe sets the sustainable course for the organization. The next phase of this exercise, which includes the consultation with you here today, is to gather feedback on whether the proposed budget sufficiently equips the Commission and our region to succeed in the delivery of its new legislative mandate. And with that, I'm open to any questions.
Thank you, Frank. Appreciate that and the work that you've put into this. I know it's been a long go. I open the floor for questions from council. Councillor Day. And then
First of all,
Councillor Bellmans and then Councillor Goff.
I have three things. Is that all right, Your Worship?
Well, we'll start with one, and if there's not a follow-up, we'll move to the other ones and then come back once everyone's had an opportunity.
Okay. First thing, I'd like to compliment you with the St. John Energy program. I had an opportunity to see a whole community that was serviced by the methane gas in Montreal. And I was so impressed. We were just starting to get things going. So hats off to you about that. And I look forward maybe next year seeing a huge revenue stream coming in from it.
Councillor Bellmans?
how much cost to haul the leach into St. John or dispose of leach?
Yeah, I don't have the exact number, but I'll explain to you how costs can escalate pretty quickly. So we have staff on site that can do the truck driving. But and we do think this is a climate change issue, but due to the recent weather incidents, they're longer, they take longer. And what happens is that we have a retention pond. If that retention pond access is too high, well then we've got to bring in extra work, and they're paying overtime for that work, and we bring in additional support. So that can escalate pretty long, especially when we get 3 days of nonstop heavy rain. That becomes a real serious cost for us, because we also have to let some people sleep. We gotta it's not a nonstop operation. So that can get pretty large, and if you get 2 or 3 of those in the first 2 quarters, for example, it just really hurts in our ability. So we keep budgeting up, but with these weather incidences that continue to increase, we're seeing that this is just a natural progression of what leachate will do.
Are you going to plan on pipe to St. John eventually for pipe system, or?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's still an ongoing discussion. It would be a massive capital expenditure to do that. I think talking to the general manager of solid waste, one of the things we said was these would be discussions that we would review, because now, in the event that the EIA was approved, this is just a longer shelf life for the landfill. It increases the longevity of the landfill, and with that, well, you can look at, now is it worth it? Now, should we make this investment now that we'll be there for this much more amount of time? And so that would be a consideration post that approval process to see if that's something that we should look at. But certainly, the process now is costly, and it's at risk of these weather events. So if those continue to increase, I think you're on the right track that we'd be looking at options like that.
Thank you. Councillor Bell?
Just a question regarding proposed 2024 member fees. Am I correct that looking at this, we see the different members? Clearly, the town of Bay-Westfield is the lowest. And that's a function of both tax base as well as population. But would it also not include the fact that we're the only municipality there or entity there that does not receive solid waste collection? So we're not paying for the service that we're not receiving.
Yeah, I'll try to answer. Your CAO might correct me here, but I'll try my best. That would not be part of the equation, because the solid waste budget would be separated from this slide. So you would only experience that through the tipping fee. So that's where you would experience that impact of landfill costs. But you do point out something else that is a benefit to Bay-Westfield, is that it has its own planning supports. There's 2 of the communities here that do not, so they pay into an extra service that they have to pay for entirely, where you is not one of the recipients of that service of planning and building inspection. You have it in-house. You're not charged extra for that. So you have kind of the base minimal fee built into your equation.
Thank you.
Councillor Deputy Mayor Toole?
I just was wondering a little bit if we can talk about the mix between our member fees that we pay with Envision St. John and this one, how that works together, because it's kind of an overlap with the economic development.
Yeah. It's a great question. For example, last year you would have paid directly to Envision St. John. And now what happened was the province, through its new legislative mandate to the commission, said it's the commission's responsibility. You are now responsible. So what we do is we bake those fees right into our membership fees. So those membership fees now integrate economic development towards promotion. We're just not holding what was there before. Whatever that plan was in advance. Next year, in 2024, one of the things we will do is map out a 5-year new rolling budget for Envision, which will define the new expected 5-year costs of Envision and divide it up. And you're right, those will be divided according to population and tax base.
Thank you. You have a follow-up, or you good? Councillor McIntosh-Lawrence?
I'm just looking through the breakdown of the budget, and a couple of questions, but just for example, under corporate services, I'm seeing like a double for the budget for 23 to 24 with CEO office and other administrative services. Could we get a further breakdown of what that involves?
We share the summary document. If you had specific questions, I can respond to it. One of the things with the corporate budget that I think is frustrating when you look at the budget is that we don't really have a budget called a corporate budget. Each service area has its own budget, and corporate feeds into it. So if you go into like a public safety budget, that line item, or community development, you'll see this line called allocation from corporate. What allocation from corporate is this kind of sidebar budget that doesn't really exist, because that budget only exists in each service area, because that's how we have to do our accounting through the province, is to share each one of our service areas. So what that budget would have is the proportional staff time. So each year staff will do this is how I'm telling you how detailed this gets. That's why. My time, for example, my salary is divided according to all the different service areas. And what I have to say is, well, how much time do you take in this service area? And then the proportion of my salary is divided according to each one of those service areas. We do that for every single staff that has kind of cross-corporate involvement. And then we do the same for office space, for the enabling services from legal, finance, and everything else. So that same equation. So the majority of costs are divided in that particular way. And you see the increase in corporate mainly because of a couple of reasons. The office space, but also this new definition of corporate coming from the landfill and integrating new services directly into a kind of a corporate budget that's spread out across the entire corporation. So if you have questions, I can give you more detail on what you're looking for specifically. I have no problem with that. We can do it, but for kind of simplicity purposes, we just give the summary and hope for some understanding, but I'm happy to give you some of that.
Do you have a follow-up, Stephanie? Councilor Burke, you?
Yeah, I just, that was one of my questions as well, and as you stated earlier, you started the year in the green, $700 and some thousand. So to have a little bit more information behind why, for example, the CEO office that jumped doubled, you know, that's significant when you've already started in the ahead position.
Yeah, so if we go back to this slide here. So what is contemplated? There are new portfolios contemplated for this budget, which would include in the communications field as well as research, as well as planning, medium and long-term planning, as well as the enabling services, so IT, finance, finance, legal, and human resources. So those all fall under the budget for the Chief Executive Officer, but in the past they didn't. Those weren't integrated. They were found in the landfill budget. They were found in different facets of our budget. So now they're all integrated. So while it looks like a big jump, there is a jump, but it's just because it's all being centralized now in that current location. So that's the rationale for why it's increased. You see that large increase, and of course the office space would be there as well.
Thank you. Councilor Day?
In your budget process, do you, because at times this feels like another layer on top of another layer on top of another layer, evaluate what we might be already paying for something, so we're not charged for something we're already paying for? You know where I'm coming from? Is there an evaluation in the process looking at that?
I think this is a very important question, and certainly not the intention of the Commission to duplicate. And I think the easiest way to answer that is that the Commission established a regional strategy, which was vetted through the region, through partners, and the question was asked, what else can we do? And how can we work together? Not how we can replace what you're already doing. How can we bring value? And that was shared through CAOs of the region, through the board, partners, through staff at the local level, everything. And that's really going to be directing our work. In addition, we establish an annual work plan that's established through the board, which is also vetted through the CAOs. And so if we are duplicating, it should be caught very quick because those bodies should know what we're trying to do. And I'd just say that, you know, some of the topics sound the same. Like we have a public safety committee. So people might easily say, well, you're duplicating public safety. But no, we're just talking about public safety as it relates to how we can work together better under the auspices of public safety. Not, we're gonna now hire a bunch of officers to do the work of public safety. That would be a violation of our mandate. But I think every group and all around each one of these mandates understand that the objective is not to duplicate or to compete with an existing local service, but is that at the local level there are some things we can do regionally. And one thing that I've encouraged each council that I've met is you don't have to do everything regional. Like you had conversations today that are local matters and they should remain local matters. But there are likely some things that you face that you're like, this could be regional. This is a regional discussion. Why are we having it locally? Why is this matter that is truly a regional matter discussed and taking the time of this local body? So I ask and I challenge the members of the council to consider that and to raise your hand when it is. And it could be as easy as just a sober second thought on something that you're dealing with to say, is there merit in maybe us talking about this as a region? Maybe there is or maybe there's not. In each council, if they do that, it can bring some added value to these discussions. Could reduce costs, could improve collaboration, and could certainly build alignment.
Do we have any other questions around the table?
I have my third question. One thing we've always had presented to us, and I find it interesting because you talked tonight about the diversion of waste going into the landfill. And this is because I've been on council for a long time. The cell life of the landfill. What year are we looking at now to the life expectancy of it?
I do not have the answer to that. I know it's out there. I believe it's about 20 to 25 years away now. Don't quote me on it, but it's around there. But you will have an opportunity to consider that too, because this type DIA that's being proposed is projected to increase it quite a bit more. And things like diversion, so your point about diversion does increase it too. So in my notes, and the general manager of the landfill shared this with me, that just the St. John diversion program itself, just that has increased the life of our own landfill, as is today, by 2 years. Just that program. So it shows that these local impacts can have a pretty tremendous impact on something that's a regional asset pretty quickly. So you translate that across all tonnage that we receive, we could really be extending the life and longevity of our landfill.
I hope you're a communications person when you have that, communicates that out to the community. Because for the length of time I've been sitting here, we've always been talking about 20, 25, 35 years out. And here it is like 10, 15 years later and we're still talking like that. So obviously your crew and that part of your commission are doing an awesome job. And that should be communicated out because that's a good news story.
Thank you.
Do you have any other questions for Phil right now? No, I'll just take my desk. I know that you've heard this from me before, but I feel like I need to take every single opportunity to mention the fact that, you know what I'm gonna say, don't you? That the Regional Services Support Fund is money that comes from the hollowing out of the Community Funding Equalization Grant, which is money coming from municipalities that is now being used to support provincially mandated services. So I always think that that's important to never forget that you know, municipal money is being used to prop up provincial services. And I will continue to advocate for new provincial money at every possible opportunity there. We're talking about the landfill a little bit. Do we have a long-term capital plan for the landfill?
Yes, as part of our applications to the Municipal Capital Borrowing Board, we have to submit a 5-year projection of where they are. So we have that kind of mapped out, and it does bounce from year to year, and it really depends on whether we're starting a new cell. As soon as we start a new cell, there's an upfront cost to it, as well as replacing a new electrical. So last year was a big year for that. Through the EIA process, that would be another piece that would be evaluated, is what does that mean? Because initial feedback that you receive as a board member, and council should be aware of, is that there are some productive savings, because we don't have to run into these cells as quickly, because we move up on existing cells versus creating new ones. So it diverts some of those funds for a later date. So we'd have a 5-year plan. The regional strategy does call for more of the tactical, the strategic side of it, and we said we didn't want to dive into it right away because we're still waiting on PPP, the new federal regulations, the EIA, aggregate source, among others that we want to get to before. So we're kind of just on the cusp of getting into what I'd call more strategic, tactical landfill. What does it look like in the future with these assumptions that we're still waiting on? So I'd see that as a 2024 to 2026 type project to develop that site.
Are we looking at going further than just that 5 years into, 10 to 20 year capital?
Could be something that's considered, and now that's the minimum requirement from the province in order to access funding. One thing that I have talked to our chief financial officer, and those costs tend to fluctuate a lot. So we'd say, oh yeah, that's going to cost us this much in 5 years, and then that 5 years comes around, and we just laugh at each other and say we were so off. The costs have escalated way faster than we could have ever predicted, and so that would be the other risk that we have with that. But it's a good precursor for it. And I should mention to you, because you've asked this question around the board, I think this is important, is that they will not require for this year, but in future years they will require a 5-year operating budget projection as well. So this idea that we will be accessing more of that regional service and support fund, but how do we go about doing it? I think our boards have a little bit more familiarity with that, predictability, so that would be baked in for the 2025 budget.
So another, something that I heard around the table here tonight is people are a little uncomfortable with the jump in the corporate services, and I'm hearing that they want more transparency on how those allocations were, how the decision was made for those allocations. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, so I maybe share this in a couple different ways. The board of directors has received more detail. Some of the material that we shared was confidential in nature in terms of some of the positions, for example, that we were contemplating, as well as our expectations around the cost for future space as well. So those are all private because they're tied to negotiations as well as human resource matters. So I think that the most important is that we are contemplating new positions. Those positions are really highlighted heavily in the report that are provided. The report highlights the deliverables that each one of those positions would provide. And we don't actually talk about positions, we just talk about the outcomes that we're looking for. And you'd also see how those respond to specific actions from the regional strategy as well. So that's clearly articulated in the report. In addition to the report, when I talked about those enabling services, it breaks down all the things that the services now require with this expanded service that we have and what that means. So I'll just give you an example. This might be an easy one. We have one person that comes in once a week who's our chief financial officer. And that person has come in for 1 day a week for their entire employment. We do a great job. But for us to consider that job is the same job as it was when it was just the landfill is inaccurate. If you saw our budget, we've now basically doubled our budget in that period of time. There's double the amount of financial needs, contracts, and reviews. So that's just an example. That particular portfolio, that position requires more attention. But you can imagine that IT, human resources, they all have that pressure on it too. So the report, if you look at the report, it's like 28 pages, so I apologize. It details out that as best as we possibly can. The other expenses, of course, the office space that's there as well. There's also, if you look at the regional strategy, it has 84 different actions. There's, I think, 20 that's earmarked for 2024. So we haven't done a work planning exercise of that, but we would have reviewed all those actions and said, what can we do in-house? and what resources do we need to do that on a permanent basis? And then we also said, what are part-time? What are things that we only need for a period of time? We don't need this technical expertise, so let's seek that expertise through part-time contracts or consulting fees. So all that is mapped out in that report, and I'd say that really gives you a good idea. I'm not going to go through and calculate the exact costs of each one of those services, but I think if you read through the report, you'll see that there's a pretty strong business case there for the need of these expenditures. The only last thing I'd share is that the commission started at a very minimal approach. Our commission, unlike many others in the province, has remained very, very slim. And so our trajectory to kind of what I call a startup environment might be a little bit more pressure on our members than others, because they have grown incrementally through the last 12 years, where we've remained really kind of bare bones for that period of time. So as we kind of scale up, one of the things that the board has indicated is, let's not just rip the Band-Aid. So don't be asking for 20 staff or 10 staff in 1 year. Make this incremental and make sure that it's related to the highest priority, highest need items. So the budget also, what I believe is that it is more resources, so I don't want to diminish what we're asking for, but by no means was this expected to be a big kind of one Band-Aid rip, and we'll assess after the year and determine what that next step is from there.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor?
Can I offer you a suggestion? There's a book called The Parkinson's Theory, and it's on government. And it's incredible. It was written many years ago. And you should see why some of us really question who's doing what.
I would look at.
Well, Phil, thank you very much. I appreciate your time here tonight, and I know it's late and you've got family to get home to, so, and then this is the first time you've been in front of a council recently, so again, thanks for your work.
Thank you.
Okay, so the motion is that the council of the town of Bay-Westfield receive and file the information as presented. Do I have a motion? Thank you, Councillor Lawrence. Do I have a second? Councillor Berkey, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion is carried, thank you. Item 8, minutes of previous meeting. 8A, regular council minutes of August 14th, 2023. The motion is that the council of the town of Bay-Westfield adopt the minutes of the regular meeting of August 14th, 2023 as presented. We have a motion. Thank you, Councillor Murphy. Do I have a second? Deputy Mayor Toole, any questions or comments on the motion? There being none, all in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion is carried, thank you. Item 9, unfinished business. There being none, we'll move on to item 10, bylaws. 10A, PD-010 subdivision bylaw. John, can you speak to the motion, please?
Certainly, Your Worship. This is being, we brought this to council in the last year or two. This is being amended due to the amalgamation of Ward 2, and I'll let David provide summary.
There's really no big changes because it was brought in 2022. Ward 2 is effectively covered by DTI for road work, so any subdivisions will need to have provincial approval. So it breaks down the same process either way until you get to the approval, whether it's either council in Ward 1 or the province would be dealing with the approvals in Ward 2.
Do you have any questions for David through the CAO? I have one. I noticed when I was reading through the bylaw, under item 3.7, concrete curb and gutter, it says unless otherwise specified, concrete curb and gutter shall be installed in strict compliance with the NBDTI standard specification, item number 53. So my question is, what is the parameter for unless otherwise specified? Because I have heard once or twice that having concrete curb and gutter can be an impediment to development because of cost.
Can be, it's been the role of the town dealing with the steep grades of the town that controls the water. I don't really see any changing that, other than the good example would be the approvals in Ward 2 wouldn't apply, because that would be a standard use.
So what is the, like unless otherwise, how do you meet that, what does that mean exactly, unless otherwise specified? Who makes that decision about specification?
The engineering of the road comes from the engineer involved in bringing it forward to the town. It's reviewed by the town engineer as well before it comes to council, so.
And Your Worship, just to build on what David said, we're getting more precipitation in less time. And this is one of the ways, through the stormwater system that we can ensure there isn't erosion or other overland drainage issues that arise on private property. Some of the roads that we have can't support ditches as an example, which is a good system. So I think that it's necessary where applicable. But again, as David indicated, it's not necessary in all places.
So the unless otherwise specified gives us flexibility in this regard?
Yeah, and it's usually an engineering standard that determines that.
Thank you. And Councillor Bell?
Can we go by the grade of the land for curb and gutter, or it's just such a certain everywhere? It's not
I
very.
don't know offhand, I know part of the equation is based on the volume of anticipated precipitation. But I'm sure there's other stuff related to the type of soil and stuff like that. I don't know, David. Are you familiar with
It's
it?
relatively level, the contours of the area around it. The curb gutter directs the water to that secondary system.
So I just heard a report today actually out of Houston. I think you're familiar with that area. And there's been so much asphalt laid, and it hasn't been good integration with the natural environment, that now when they get an immense amount of precipitation, there isn't enough space in the system for the water to drain properly. So you go to parking lots and roads, from what I heard in this report, there's significant water issues that you have to drive through or walk through to parking. But I think here, generally trying to work with the landscape to ensure that we preserve the integrity of property and manage waterfall, but we also don't want to drive up expenses. We've been going through the HAF process. We want to encourage development, but we also have to preserve investments that are already made.
Yeah, it was just that, in particular, it was that those first three words that caught my eye because they were sort of vague as to who specifies what and how and.
Yeah, in my own experience, subdivisions that I've been a part of, we used curb and gutter. We had steep ditches, and then we also had we just had a basic soil. And again, it depended on the environment. One area was sandy soil, so it was easy that the water would just dissipate. Another area, it was really flat, the ditch was good. Another one, there was a lot of multi-door units, and with a lot of vehicles, a lot of kids. So the decision there was curb and gutter, but also had sidewalks and things like that as well. But really, there's a lot of variables that go into calculating that. What the engineers here go, I can't say that.
Thank you. Anybody else have a question before I go to Councillor Bell? Councillor Bell?
Can we go narrower streets to save on costs? Is that feasible or not?
Well, that goes against an active what we use as active transportation. The desire that we hear. The mayor had a meeting last week. Why aren't the roads wider so that we can encourage more cycling? And I think that narrow streets would solve some problems, but I think at the end of the day it creates more. We still need right of way for snow removal as an example. We want people to walk. We want people to cycle. We're going to get there, but we're going to have to find a way, Councillor. I don't see narrow streets. It may solve one problem, but
Like lower volume streets like things, cul-de-sacs or smaller streets. How do you save on costs? How do you cost on money build a road?
But cul-de-sacs are actually quite expensive.
Yeah, they are.
Their primary expense is in operations rather than in capital. So they're good for the developer, bad for our operations.
Any further questions or comments? The motion is that the council of the town of Grand Bay-Westfield request written views of the planning advisory committee of the draft bylaw number PD-010 subdivision bylaw. Do I have a motion? Thank you, Deputy Mayor Toole. Do I have a second? Councillor Murphy, thank you. All in favor? Contrary minded? Motion is carried, thank you. Item 11, new business recommendations. 11A, New Brunswick Municipal Finance Corporation application. The motion is that the council of the town of Grand Bay-Westfield authorize the mayor and CAO to issue and sell to the New Brunswick Municipal Finance Corporation a municipality of Grand Bay-Westfield 2023 debenture in a principal amount of $1,339,000 on such terms and conditions as are recommended by the New Brunswick Municipal Finance Corporation. And be it resolved that the municipality of Grand Bay-Westfield agree to issue post-dated checks payable to the New Brunswick Finance Corporation as and when they are requested in payment of principal and interest charges on the above debenture. Do I have a motion? Thank you, Councillor Balcom. Do I have a second? Thank you, Councillor Bailmans. John, can you speak to the motion, please?
Yeah, just before I turn it over to the CFO, this is kind of a good news story. We've been carrying a lot of costs related to the purchase of snow removal fleet equipment and a fire truck, but I'll let the CFO speak more to this.
Thank you, Your Worship. So the application in front of you is the last stage in funding the purchase of these important assets. In 2022 and earlier this year, Council approved the initial applications to the Municipal Capital Borrowing Board, which they approved, and administration subsequently acquired a trackless municipal tractor, a loader, and the fire chief is getting a shiny new fire truck hopefully this month. To pay for these purchases, we borrowed through the bank on short-term loans. We have been incurring interest on those, so hopefully once these debentures are issued, the interest will be at a lower rate, so it'll be good for the bottom line.
Thank you, James. Do you have any questions or comments on the motion? There being none, all in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion is carried. Thank you, council. And that's a good news story. 11B, communication device policy. The motion is that the council of the town of Grand Bay-Westfield approve the communications device policy for immediate effect. Do I have a motion? Thank you, Councillor Murphy, and I think that was a second by Deputy Mayor Toole. Thank you. Please let the record reflect that Councillor Toole left. Thank you. So we have a motion and a second, and John, I guess it's Brock that would speak to this motion.
Yeah, I'm going to turn it over to our communications manager.
Thank you, John. This policy is meant to set out the expected guidelines for utilization of town-issued communications devices, and it actually is simply replacing a former policy which was for cell phones only, so now it includes and not limited to smartphone, tablets, and laptops.
Thank you, Brock. Any questions or comments on the motion? There being none, all in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion is carried. Thank you, Brock, for your good work on that.
No problem.
Item C, 11C, Memorandum of Understanding Millennium Estates. The motion is that the council of the town of Grand Bay-Westfield approve the Memorandum of Understanding for a 5-year development improvement grant to a maximum of $176,261.20 between the town and 697800 NB Corporation. Do I have a motion? Thank you, Councillor Murphy. Do I have a second? Thank you, Councillor McIntosh Lawrence. And John, can you speak to the motion, please?
Yeah, I'm going to turn it over to the development officer. Good news, bad news, sorry. Good news, we got development, bad news, we have to pay for.
So this is the first development incentive that under the program brought up in 2019 for the 24 apartment development on Drive. The agreement in principle had come to council, but eventually till the actual work is completed, which would be 2022. Following that, we can base our figures on what the grant numbers would be, and so the MOU is to start to set up that agreement for 5 years.
David. Have any questions or comments on the motion? There being none, all in favor? Contrary minded? Motion is carried, thank you. And it's like you said, good news, bad news, we wouldn't be giving the money out if we didn't have the development, so, that's a good thing. Item D, memorandum of understanding Douglas Estates subdivision. The motion is that the council of the town of Grand Bay-Westfield approve the revised memorandum of understanding for a multi-parcel grant in the amount of $505.98 per lot for 2023 for each of the qualifying vacant lots in the Douglas Estates subdivision. Do I have a motion? Thank you, Councillor Burpee. Do I have a second? Thank you, Councillor Bellmans. And John?
Sorry, same but different.
So similarly, it is an incentive program grant. In this case, it's for vacant lots. To be eligible, we created 4 more lots. And 1 lot has been sold, so the agreement is based in, reflects 3 lots. And this would be the second of 5 years of leads.
Do you have any questions or comments on the motion? There being none, all in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion is carried, thank you. Item 12, bills for payment. The motion is that the council of the town of Grand Bay-Westfield authorize the September 11th, 2023 bills for payment as presented in the amount for $438,736.16. Do I have a motion? Thank you, Councillor Burpee. Second? Thank you, Deputy Mayor Toole. Any questions or comments on the motion? Councillor McIntosh Lawrence?
I just have 2, number 36, for $42,000 for Dylan. What project was this?
So we had work done upon the Quad and Prosser. That's up for 102 going towards the highway,
Oh, okay.
going up the hill, and then it's on the right.
Uh-huh.
So anyways, that was completely, has no asphalt. So that's for project management, administrative fees, things like that. We already paid, council already approved the design fees some time ago. So that's the nature of the work.
And the other one, $2,857 for a return check.
This is proof that Irving sometimes doesn't get things right. They sent us a check for almost $3,000 and our assistant treasurer processed it. And then they decided, well, what is this check for? And realized that this check wasn't for us. Irving contacted the treasurer and CFO, and we're just paying back money that Irving gave to us mistakenly. The good news, we made a profit off of Irving of about $1. So I don't know how many people can say that about Irving, but we made a profit.
Thank you.
Surprising they didn't ask for it back.
Profit?
Yeah.
Any more questions or comments? Councillor Burpee.
Item number 66, for $4,968 to trim the grass for John Leonard. What is that?
So I'm gonna have to turn it over to the Works Commissioner.
Yes, annually each year, in the past, we had another contractor that go around with the tractor and they trim grass along the side of the road. So this year, that was the supplier that did that, John, so he did that this year.
It was the bush hog that we saw.
Which I will mainly great.
Any other questions? Councillor Bellmans?
Number 5, rescue, number 5, is it?
Number 5?
Yeah.
The 1,550.
I'm gonna turn that over to the chief. Oh, I looked at the wrong one, my apologies, sorry.
As a repair work of that.
Okay. Sorry, your worship, while we're talking about the backhoe,
Yes.
our backhoe is down. It broke down repairing the shoulder along River Valley Drive just south of here. There's hydraulic issues. It's be receiving repairs. In the meantime, the works department is looking to lease a backhoe.
When is it scheduled to be back on?
Yes, it's, again, like everything else, it's probably a week apart, and then so we're a couple of weeks out, and we're looking to rent a person please working to rent the equipment, the job we have around.
Thank you. All right, if there are no further questions, all in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion is carried, thank you. Item 13, consent agenda. 13A, letter moved for melanoma. B, letter, Minister of Local Government, Glen Savoy. C, email, courageous canine advertising information. D, letter, UMNB, Municipality Week. E, letter, Quiz Pamsis to Air Canada, re-flight reduction. F, letter, Air Canada to Quiz Pamsis, re-flight reduction. G, RCMP quarterly report. H, PAC minutes, June 5th, 2023. I, monthly building report, August 2023. J, second quarter council spending report and consent agenda. The motion is that the council of the town of Grand Bay-Westfield receive and file the consent agenda items for September 11th, 2023. Do I have a motion? Thank you, Councillor Burpee. I have a second. Thank you, Councillor Balcom. Any questions or comments on the motion? There being none, all in favor? Contrary minded? Motion is carried. Thank you very much. Item 14, council report. Oh, yes.
Sorry, Worship. When the sergeant was speaking about the discharge of firearms, I emailed our solicitor inquiring whether or not the town can make a bylaw regarding discharge of firearms within municipal boundaries. Not all provinces allow municipalities to make that bylaw. New Brunswick, if council so wishes, we can make our own bylaw that is more stringent than federal or provincial guidelines. So if council would like me to do that, that is a direction that we can go.
Thank you for that information. Item 14, council reports. And so we will start with Deputy Mayor Toole.
Just the highlights of the past couple of weeks would be the strategic planning session that leadership and most of council attended, which was great. It was a good refresher and an update of our strategic plan and our priorities. So it's always a good reset every year just before budget time to get rolling. And I guess one fun item would be on the weekend I was able to attend was a family fun day that was put on by the fundraising committee for the St. Augustine Memorial Garden, which was actually something that received a grant from the town a few months ago as well. They're putting it's a community garden on the site of the former church, the St. Augustine's Church. It was a really nice event. I think it was small but mighty. I don't know if the word got spread super wide, but there was quite a few people there. It was lovely, a lot of volunteers. And they had a little fun run and some bouncy castles and things for them. So that was a really nice event. And just a reminder for people too that all that was, I told people about it, people were like, I would have gone had I known. But just it is out there. I did see it on the community page and I know we shared it on the town page. So people can take a look at what's going on so we have that information.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Your Worship, and just to piggyback on Deputy Mayor's comments about the community event that occurred, I have to give a lot of accolades to the organizers. That every time that I drove by on the way to Fredericton, I saw minuscule changes each day, but over the last week, I had a look and just stepped back, and it's really changed for the better, the appearance of that area. Hats on the back to the organizers of that. And I think the $1,000 grant that the town gave was returned manifold. One item only to report on, Your Worship, and that was along with other members of council this last Saturday, had the pleasure of working with 2 or 3 different communities, communities that know each other from the fire services working together, but now this was a new approach, and that was through the 2 respective recreation committees. Specifically, we had about 25 to 30 volunteers, including many members of council as well as our MLA, who, it was just like clockwork. The rink boards at Wellsford Outdoor Arena were taken down very diligently and safely as well, transported in a convoy with various volunteer vehicles and trailers, taken off, piled at the 4 corners for future installation, And we had a lot of fun doing it. We got to talk to people. We had a nice little barbecue, and it was just great to see two local communities working together in a different expo. And hopefully in another few weeks, those boards will be installed. And in our town of Bay-Westfield, we will have an outdoor rink with boards.
Thank you, Councillor, and thank you for your work facilitating the barbecue, both in terms of getting the supplies and also cooking the hot dogs. That's never an easy job, especially after all the hard labor. So that was great. Councillor Burkby, tell me about the work you've done for the community since the last meeting.
Okay, thank you. August 23rd, I actually got a chance to attend the Youth Entrepreneur Sale at in the parking lot of the River Valley Rink, and I visited every little booth that they had, and I just think it's important to support and attend, if you can, these young people who have, put all their hard work on the table, and I think I got something from every table. So that was fun. And also the strategic plan review that we attended on August 30th, which was my first strat plan review. So I enjoyed that process, and I think it's important to look at where we were and where we're going, and explain each process so that new people like me can actually understand what's going on. And also then on the weekend, I was also very proud of the community spirit at Wellsford, where we gathered to take the boards down. We got them all to Four Corners. Everybody's very excited about that, because that's just protection for the rink. All the volunteers put a lot of hard effort into that ice space. So hopefully that's going to make a big difference. And we already have, I received a name and a phone number for somebody on the Britton Road that may be able to donate the tractor and the digger. That's great. So we can put the posts in. So that's good. Volunteers, no money.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Day.
Well, I'm just getting back from road trip to Yellowstone National Park, and no, I did not see Kevin Costner. And I encourage anybody and everybody, if you could ever go out there, to go. It was incredible. They even have bison walking down the middle of the road. You don't argue with them. You let them do what they want to do. And I'd like to apologize because my laptop, the first meeting in July, couldn't connect. And then last month, it was the hotspot. What I thought was going to be a Wi-Fi spot wasn't. So I apologize to the community, because I had full intention of Zooming in for the meetings. And I'd like to thank you tonight for recognition of my nephew. It's been a shock and a surprise in some ways. In other ways, it's a blessing. And it's life.
Very sorry for your loss, Councillor McIntosh Lawrence.
So August 21st, we had a Community Vitality Committee meeting where we mainly talked about Fall Fest. So for those of you that don't know, our second annual Fall Fest is coming up in October 10th to 15th. So if you don't, I think the deadline was September 8th, but I'm sure if you wanted to get in on it, you probably still could. So get your submissions in if you're interested in participating in that. The strat plan, or participate in the strat plan, and again, it's a great refresher every year to attend that. Also, on last Saturday, I attended the fun walk, I would say. Did not run, but it was a fun walk, and it was great to see they had a lot of volunteers for that event, and it was nice to see all the community supporting that. And also, I also attended taking in the boards at Wellsford and transporting them to the Four Corners.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Bailey. And
So I had the opportunity to do with the strap plan too, with mostly councillors and leadership team here, and it was a good turnout all day, and got a lot of things done. And I went to a cheer auction for Mrs. Oliver, she not well, like currently, so she made a lot of good money there, so it's good to see her get some help there too. So and we did help the boards also the weekend. So
Yeah, thank you for your work, and do you know if there are any further fundraisers planned for Darlene?
no.
That's it for now? Thank you. So I did pretty much everything that you've already talked about here, so I won't go into that. I do wanna talk about the Four Corners and the Wellsford Community Association a little bit. It was just absolutely fabulous to see that collaboration and, you know, the synergies between groups when they come together like that, and it's one of those things where the sum is more than the whole is more than the sum of its parts kind of thing, and I was really happy to be able to help in a small way there. The strat plan review was huge, that, you know, reflection matters, so by taking that step back and cultivating the practice like we have been of making the sense of the past year and, you know, where we're going in the future, it's a crucial opportunity to remind ourselves of why the work we do makes a difference, why it matters, and how we can continuously learn from it, because learning is a process in this job constantly. So one of the things that I've been spending a lot of time doing last week and will be doing this week is attending Federation of Canadian Municipalities meetings. So I've been appointed to a couple of different committees and a working group. So this week we had Atlantic Caucus meeting, we had Community Safety and Crime Prevention meeting, and the Anti-Racism and Equity Committee meeting. So that was, you know, by being on those committees, it gives municipalities across the nation a chance to work together and strategize on issues that are a priority from a national lens. So, you know, we in the town of Bay-Westfield have an opportunity to have a voice in those conversations, and that's really important. So next week, it will be election readiness working group and the board of directors meetings and committee of the whole. So there'll be more work ahead for me there, but it's exciting work, and I'm really happy to be able to bring the town's perspective to the work that we're doing there. I also want to highlight that the community grants portal is open, is it not, Rob?
Yes.
Yeah, so if you are a community group or a charity, please get your application in. And when does it close?
September 30th.
September 30th. So, you know, you still have a couple of weeks to get that in, but we really encourage any community group that has a worthy project in mind to apply. And is it next week that's Municipality Week?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. So next week is Municipality Week, which is the week where we get to talk about municipalities, why what we do matters, what it is that we do, and why it's important to everybody around us. You know, that grassroots work, you know, that we count on every single day, from sewage to roads to sidewalks to snow plowing to policies, etc. So watch our social media for a little bit more information on Municipality Week starting Monday. And that is my council report for tonight. So I will move on to item 15, business arising from committee of the whole. There being none, we will move on to item 16, adjournment. The motion is that the council of the town of Grand Bay-Westfield adjourn the meeting at 9:08 p.m. Do I have a motion? Thank you, Deputy Mayor Toole. And do I have a second? Councilor Berkey, thank you. All in favor? Aye. Contrary minded? Motion is